Welcome to this explainer. All right, let's just dive right into it. Picture this. You're staring at your bank statement at the end of the month, and surprise, there's actually money left over. Sounds fantastic, right? But suddenly, you're hit with a literal $1 million choice. It's a choice that could completely determine if your golden years are spent traveling the globe or, well, pinching pennies. Do you aggressively wipe out your debt, or do you start building wealth through investing? It's the ultimate debate that keeps millions of people up at night. So what's the core dilemma here? Do you take that extra cash and just hurl it at your debts like you're playing an endless game of financial whack-a-mole? Or do you invest it, kick back, and let compound interest work its absolute magic while you sleep? What's really wild is that most people make this critical, life-altering decision based entirely on a gut feeling. And let's be real, relying on your gut for financial planning is kind of like using a magic 8-ball to fund your retirement. This single choice, it can mean a difference of hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. Now, the foundational math separating these two paths is absolutely fascinating. When you pay off debt, you're essentially locking in a guaranteed, risk-free return that's exactly equal to the interest rate on that debt. So if you crush a credit card balance that's charging you 22% interest, well, that's a guaranteed 22% return on your money. I mean, try finding that with zero risk in the stock market. No way. But on the flip side, the stock market has historically averaged around a 10% annual return over the long haul. Notice I said historically, though. Investing is a potential return, and it definitely comes with its fair share of volatility. Some years you're up, some years you're down. Which brings us to Section 1, the ultimate math showdown, a tale of two paths. Let's actually map out how these two distinct strategies diverge over a 30-year timeline. Imagine this exact setup with me. You've got a $350,000 mortgage at a 4% interest rate over 30 years. Your standard monthly payment sits right around $1,670. But you've been smart, you've hustled, and you managed to scrape together an extra $1,000 every single month. Now you have to decide, do you channel your inner financial warrior and attack that mortgage, or do you pump that $1,000 straight into the market? If you go with path A, the debt payoff strategy, and you throw that extra $1,000 at your mortgage every single month, you're going to be entirely mortgage-free in about 14 and a half years instead of 30. And by doing that, you save a staggering $140,000 in interest. That is not too shabby at all. Then, once you're debt-free at year 14.5, you take that extra $1,000, combine it with your old $1,670 mortgage payment, and you invest the whole shebang for the remaining 15 and a half years. But hold on a second, let's pull the rug out here. What if you chose path B? That means making just the bare minimum mortgage payments and investing that extra $1,000 from day one. Well, the total wealth difference between these two strategies is a jaw-dropping $800,000. Yeah, you heard that right. That is the massive opportunity cost of not having your money working in the market from the very beginning. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why. That payoff strategy, it leaves you with a very respectable $1.1 million in total wealth after 30 years. But the investing strategy balloons to $1.9 million. Yes, absolutely, you paid way more mortgage interest along the way. But by investing from day one, compound interest had 3 solid decades to just flex its muscles. Mathematically speaking, investing the extra cash completely dominates the spreadsheet. But of course, there's nuance here, which brings us to Section 2. Not all debt is equal. You see, a 4% mortgage is considered incredibly cheap money, and that introduces us to the hierarchy of debt. Right at the very top, we have your credit cards, usually sitting with brutal rates between 18 and 29%. Guys, this is literal financial highway robbery, and there is absolutely no safe investment on the planet that can beat those rates. You have to attack that immediately. Down at the bottom, we have your 4% mortgages, which, as we just proved, you should probably keep. And sitting right there in the middle, we have things like car loans and student loans. Let's break those middle ones down a bit further. For high-interest credit cards, pure logic dictates you use the avalanche method. That means attacking the highest interest rate first, completely regardless of the balance size. It saves you the absolute most money, even if it's kind of less instantly gratifying than paying off those tiny little balances first. Then we've got car loans. Look, cars are depreciating assets. Paying extra on a car loan basically means you're just paying a premium to own something that literally loses value every single day. Mathematically, it makes way more sense to invest that cash instead. Student loans. They occupy this weird middle ground because they often come with tax deductions that lower the real interest rate. But just remember, education is a debt you cannot sell your way out of if times get tough.
All right, moving on to Section 3, the inflation plot twist.
Consider this little nugget of insight. When you have low-interest fixed-rate debt, like a mortgage, you are essentially borrowing today's really expensive dollars and paying them back with tomorrow's much cheaper dollars. Inflation is quietly working right there in your favor. Think about a cup of coffee 10 years ago versus today. Prices go up everywhere, but your fixed mortgage payment, it never gets that memo. It becomes a financial fossil, just frozen in time, getting comparatively cheaper and easier to pay off every single year as inflation naturally rises.
Which brings us to this incredible dynamic. By keeping low-interest debt during inflationary periods, you are basically playing both sides of the game perfectly. Your debt payments are totally frozen and getting easier to pay, while the assets you're investing in, like stocks or real estate, are generally growing to match or even exceed inflation. In a high-inflation environment, you are essentially getting paid to borrow money. How crazy is that? But hey, we're human, right? So let's hit section 4, the psychology of money. Because if math were the only factor, we'd all just drive sensible old cars and eat rice and beans every day. Spreadsheets are great, but spreadsheets don't dictate how well you sleep at night. I absolutely love this quote from the source material. Peace of mind has value that doesn't show up in spreadsheets. You know, some people are just natural debt haters. The very idea of owing anyone money just haunts them. And listen, if sacrificing some potential stock market gains means you get to live a stress-free, completely debt-free life, that is a perfectly acceptable and valid choice. You always have to account for your own behavioral psychology. In your life stage completely alters this math, too. Think about a 25-year-old with decades until retirement. They have a massive risk tolerance. If the market crashes, sure, it stings, but they have 30 whole years to recover and reap those long-term rewards. But if you're 55 and nearing retirement, a market crash hits entirely differently. Suddenly, the guaranteed return of paying off your debt looks vastly more attractive than dealing with the roller coaster of the stock market. You also have to factor in the invisible players here, taxes and employer benefits. If you pay off your mortgage early, you lose the mortgage interest tax deduction. Conversely, long-term capital gains taxes on your investments might lower your effective return. But the absolute most critical factor to consider, the 401k match. If your employer offers a match, that is an instant, guaranteed return, sometimes 50 or even 100% on your dollar. Guys, only a true financial masochist would ignore free money just to pay off low-interest debt. Okay, let's wrap this all up in section 5, building your strategy. Let's synthesize everything into some actionable rules you can actually use. Before you even start debating investing versus paying off debt, you absolutely must establish an emergency fund. We're talking 3 to 6 months of living expenses, just sitting safely in a savings account. I know it's totally unsexy, it earns tiny interest, and inflation eats away at it, but it is your foundational insurance policy. Without this cash buffer, the minute your car breaks down, you're going to be forced to pull money out of your investments at a terrible time, or worse, rack up high-interest credit card debt, and that will completely collapse your entire plan. Now, what if you're still completely torn? What if you want those sweet math gains, but you also inherently hate debt? Well, the perfect psychological hedge is a 50-50 split. Take your extra money and just divide it right down the middle, but half toward debt reduction and half toward investments. Sure, it's not the most mathematically optimal path, but it beautifully hedges your risk and satisfies that emotional need for security, all while still letting you capture the magic of compound interest. So, if we distill all of the source material down, here is the definitive hierarchy of financial needs. Step 1, build that boring but incredibly essential emergency fund. Step 2, attack high-interest debt, like credit cards, violently using the avalanche method. Step 3, once that toxic debt is finally gone, invest your money heavily while happily managing your low-interest fixed-rate debt, like your mortgage, and just let inflation do the heavy lifting for you over time. Which brings us to our final slide and a question I really want to leave you pondering. Will you spend forever planning the perfect strategy, or will you execute one today? The analysis makes it crystal clear. The mathematically optimal choice might not actually match your psychology. And you know what? That's completely fine. The only truly fatal mistake is overthinking it so much that your money just sits there doing absolutely nothing. Pick a path, trust the structure, and start building your wealth today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.